record. Okay, welcome everyone. Nate, you want to start?
Yeah. Wait. So, welcome to the Managing Software Teams in Seattle. This is our virtual meetup. I don't know why I put virtual on it anymore. It's what we've been doing since we used to meet in person. We get food and it was fun. Yeah. But yeah. Let's see. So this is the event format. It's about an hour and a half. We go through an intro and some logistics, and then we have our guest speaker, Rich, and we'll do some small group breakouts. Usually we'll split up, with this group, probably two, and we can have more small group conversations. It's kind of our networking piece. And then out of that small group, we try to generate some questions. So we get back to the large group, and we just have some Q&A with Rich. So that's the agenda. Let's see.
The usual
Who's
stuff. Videos,
yeah.
Switch to gallery view so you can see everybody's faces, ask clarifications as we go, ask to hold the big questions for the breakout rooms to discuss and then bring back to Rich.
Yeah, sure thing. And then overview of what this meeting is. We got a couple new folks that I brought in from a client at Alaska, but really it's just because doing software engineering management is hard. It's hard work. It's not easy to do, and a lot of times people get put into this position without any formal training. They've are kind of thrust into a leadership position, and so I saw when I moved from the military over to the private sector that this area there was a lot less professional development and leadership training that compared to what I had in the Air Force. And so I had a meetup with Ron, and then we started talking and kind of came up with this idea to have a meetup group that met periodically to really focus in on this type of stuff. We get a bunch of engineering managers together, do networking, professional development, and then just give you some space to get out of all the chaos and think more strategically about your teams and about how you can be a better engineering manager. Right. So yeah, and hopefully you get some actionable insights that you can take back to your teams, and that's the real goal here, and that's what we're trying to move towards.
So, and I'm and as Nate said, we ran into each other. We started talking about this. I grew up in Iowa, and I grew up in Iowa on an Iowa 1,000-acre farm, and Iowa farmers are more cussedly independent than programmers are. Having been a programmer, I resemble that remark. But the Iowa farmers are prosperous, and they're prosperous because they share what they're doing with each other. And from the time I was a wee lad, being drugged along to the lumberyard and the co-op and those kinds of things, I found farmers talking with each other about what they were trying, about contour farming and row widths and all those kinds of farm things that they were trying, and finding out whether they worked or not, and sharing their results with each other. And that community thing is just really resonates strongly with me as well. I am author of one of the very few books on managing software developers and teams, and it came out of my co-author Mickey Mantle and I, realizing that there are very few books about managing software people and teams. So take a snapshot of this if you're interested, because there's a discount code that you want to use if you order a copy of it, and that copy from Informit IT. There was so little when we started managing. Actually, when our book came out, the first edition of it came out 10 years ago, there were like 6 or 7 books total that we could find on managing software people and teams in the history of programming. And now we think they're about double that, which is good news. But there's just a ton of books on managing, a ton of books on project management, and almost nothing on managing the people who deliver the projects. So we've got a poll question for you to kick off tonight, and I'm going to launch the poll So fill in your answers. This will inform our speaker, Rich Mironov, a little bit about what your product management situation is like. All right, I'm going to do a countdown for the sixth for the person who hasn't answered. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here are the results. Rich, a lot of strong product management and product leader peers here.
I'm pleased and shocked and surprised.
Yeah, me too. And it's great news for all of you who were able to check that box. All right, so actually, I'm going to take a screenshot of that before I make it go away.
And yes, we needed another option, but I didn't know what it was, and it was really just for our own entertainment anyway. So,
okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that, and note that I'm going to introduce Rich a little bit more in a minute, but I want to note that he's going to talk for maybe half an hour, plus or minus, and then we're going to break into small groups and for 15 minutes. And there are so few of us, we may be in one small group, now probably 2 small groups. And the goal is introduce yourselves to each other, identify a top question for Q&A for Rich, and we'll get a 1 minute remaining notice. And now Rich was a software developer briefly.
ooh. You want to give the real story on that, or should I?
You can.
Okay.
But COBOL was a language, so he is the author of all the people in product management think they have the fewest books until they start looking for books on managing software developers. So that tells you that there aren't very many books on product management either. Rich has written one of them, The Art of Product Management. He's been a product leader and a chief product officer for years and years and years, and in most recent years, I think probably 15 or 20, has been consulting as a chief product officer and coaching product leaders. He was one of the founders of Product Camp in Silicon Valley, which I think was the first product camp.
Correct, 2008.
Mm-hmm. He blogs at Mironov.com and well worth subscribing to. Actually, they come out about once a month, or maybe you subscribe to his newsletter, and he tells you to go look at it, because I am and I do. So with that, he's a genius at product management. So tell us about product managers and engineering managers working together, Rich. Let me stop sharing and let you do that.
All right. So let's see if I can do this. See if I'm technical enough to get that working. Is that good?
Yeah.
And by the way, Ron and I know each other for a really long time, and we've played this very entertaining, at least for me, game where people call him up and tell him that they need his help fixing their product management team, and he cleverly.
Actually, they tell me to fix their engineering team, and then I discovered they have a really piss poor product management team. That's the reason for why they want their engineering team fixed.
And I get calls all day long with either CEOs who tell me they want me to make their engineering teams go faster, or they tell me they have a product management problem, and when we dig in, it turns out half of it's an engineering problem. So we've been playing this tag team, sometimes work together, throw leads and opportunities back and forth for a really long time, such that you may not notice that we're starting to look alike, but in the slide here, important, I'm the swimmer on the left and Ron is the swimmer on the right, in case you had trouble telling us apart, right? I
hope everyone likes our suits.
That's right. That's right. And the last time I wrote code for money as a developer was between 1981 and 1983 at Hewlett Packard, when that was a respectable place to be. And it was COBOL indeed. So, you know, I were an engineer, but I aren't one now. I still have a lot of respect for. Okay, so let's jump in. You already got this. I've been doing, you know, when I'm with product management groups who all think that they've just discovered that this is a new thing, I usually point out that since I've been doing product work on enterprise software, commercial enterprise software since the 80s, it's not a new thing, sorry. Right? And been independent for the last 20 years, blah, 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 blah. We sometimes call these interim chief product or VP jobs smoke jumper jobs, borrowed from the Canadian Fire Service, where when you're trying to deal with a really large fire, you parachute some folks behind the fire who knock down all the fuel and dig the trenches, and they don't get to go home until they're tired and smelly and smoky and the fire's out. So having done a dozen or more of those and then realized they weren't any fun, there we are. Okay, good. So let's dive in. So here's the agenda, right? I think it's important, and it'll be obvious probably to all you guys, but seems worth saying how it is that product management adds value and how it doesn't. Because certainly nobody on the go-to-market or sales and marketing side ever gets this right. A little bit of what I hear all the time from the sales and marketing side of the house and what they believe about engineering and product. You'll recognize a bunch of those, right? Therefore, why it's so important to have a united front. The takeaway at the very end is it's fine to disagree, but we never fight in front of the kids, right? When sales and marketing and operations and finance are in the room, we need to be aligned and singing the same song, even though afterwards we may fight like cats and dogs, right? Really important, because otherwise we all lose our credibility and nothing gets done, right? And some tips and tricks. Okay, so there we go. Let's just go through. And Ron's seen this 100 times, so he won't, but this is actually a quiz. This is an IO diagram, because back in the day when I was trying to explain what product managers do to my engineers, the only way we could get through it was with an IO diagram. So product management in the middle, not at the top, because nobody works for product management, right? This is an interface job. So quick, anybody want to jump in and ask and tell me what the inputs are that product management provides or feeds to the maker side of the house, which is for me, developers, designers, DevOps, QA, you know, tech writers, everybody who actually does work. What's the input set of things from product management to the maker and developer side of the house? Anybody?
Requirements.
Requirements,
Yeah,
sure. I'll put that at
requirements.
the very end of my list. Anything else?
Context.
Context. Ding, 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 ding. Right. So context is the first thing. And context, conversations, market view, priorities, all the things that happen at the top, because really important that we actually all understand what we're trying to do. When I see product managers simply write down requirements and hand them over to developers, all kinds of bad things happen. Notice I put a two-sided arrow here. Oh, and one more quick quiz. There's good scientific evidence that all developers are smarter than all product managers. Anybody know what the proof is? Come on. All you have to do is ask, okay? I've never found a developer who believed in their heart that their product management folks were almost as smart, right? So that's really important. By the way, it's true of designers too. If we're back in the I give you requirements and I'm the boss of you model, first of all, it pisses everybody off. Second of all, we end up building the wrong things. Third of all, we've wasted all the smarts that are in that blue bubble to the left, right? So really good product folks understand that they may not be the smartest person in the room, and there's a lot of good perspective and input and whatever. So the best product folks bring problem statements and ugly things to the whole team where we whiteboard them until we figure them out. Right? So two-sided arrow. I put user stories, backlogs, personas at the end because I think they're the artifacts. Nothing more worthless than a user story that's grammatically correct, but doesn't describe what the customers want and will pay for, right? Okay, good. So that was the hard one. What's the return code? What's the comeback? What's the stuff that flows from the maker side of the house back to product management?
Working stuff.
Working stuff. Good. Perfect. Right. The answer I usually get is products. which is wrong, because what we get is we get the product bits that are the ones that come from the development side of the house. And it turns out that's not sufficient to actually have a product. That's just the bits that go into the product, right? Okay, and we know this because what's the input set of things that the sales and marketing team, I'm assuming enterprise because I'm an enterprise guy, but whatever. What do my sales and marketing folks who are the employees of my company want from product management? I guess nobody's been in that job but me and Ron.
They want to know when it's gonna get done.
Exactly. When it's going to, again, what else do they want to know? Okay, we're just going to speed ahead here, right?
What are
So-
they going to get?
Right. What are they going to get? So generally what they want is they want a bunch of very high level descriptions. I call them sellable stories. Okay. Just give me the 2 paragraphs or the 2 sentences, which if I repeat them to a customer, even if I don't have any idea what they mean, right? The customer will sign the contract and give us money, right? Segmentation, who's it for? Who's it not for, right? What's the audience? What are the messages, benefits and features? By the way, they don't actually care about features at all. They care about benefits, right? What do we have to talk about? How do we describe this to our potential customers, our prospects, so they get excited, right? Pricing, demos. Notice there's not anything on the right that's a one-to-one match for anything on the left. What that means is we're going to have to do a lot of translation and reprocessing of everything that happens in the building cycle, in the design cycle, in order to make anybody on the other side understand it. Good. What do I get back? What does every product manager get back every single day from the sales and marketing team? You guys know it. What is it? Go ahead, Sean. I can tell.
I think you're fishing for grief or something like that.
You bet, right? So what we get, I nicely call it input and feedback. It's basically all the things that didn't go right today, and they're probably products and engineering's fault, right? One more quick quiz here. If anybody's worked in an enterprise sales company, what's the #1 reason that our enterprise sales team closed big deals this quarter? Anybody know? Don't think too hard. They're salespeople.
Great salespeople.
Correct. And I've surveyed 120 enterprise sales teams. The #1 reason we closed deals this quarter is because we are great salespeople. In fact, all salespeople are above average, right? So what are the 2 reasons we lost deals this quarter? Always the same. What are the 2 reasons?
Bad product bits.
Bad product bits. That's right. The product didn't do what we wanted it to do. And
The market.
sorry,
Late.
no, nope. The second one is always price. Okay. If we didn't close the deal, it's because the price was too high. So salespeople are always asking me for 2 incompatible things. One is they want a higher price to show more value so they can hit their quota faster. The other is they want deeper discount authority, which they apply on every single deal, right? Good. All right, let's just finish this. Every company has an executive team. Oh, actually, most important here. So the most important arrow on this is this one, okay? And we're going to beat this up for a bit. The #1 thing that product management folks must do, therefore, since we know that everything we hear from the sales team is biased, everything in the sales team is either great salesmanship or we're just short, say, 8 or 10,000 features and we should knock the price down 90%, right? It's not useful. So if product management folks don't spend a significant part of their time talking directly with real customers, directly with resellers, directly with buyers, directly with the churned customers who walked away, I think we lose the right to tell anybody else what should go into the product. So when I parachute into a company, the most important thing I'm asking every one of my new reports is, how many times a week do you speak with a real paying customer or user that's not a sales call? Sales calls are a different thing, right? And if the answer is less than 1 a week and they're not embarrassed, they get an immediate promotion to some other department in the company where they might want to work. Because if you're not talking to customers and you're a product manager and there's nobody at the executive team getting in your way, you're not doing your effing job. Right? So if you look in the Scrum book under product owner and you look at all of the things product owners are supposed to do according to the Scrum book, you don't find anything that says talk directly with a real customer or buyer. And for me, that completely invalidates the Scrum definition of product owner, because it means somebody else better be figuring out what we're supposed to do. And I don't know how you prioritize a backlog and understand your product if you're not going direct, because everyone in the way, everyone between me and my real customers has expected and very predictable biases that don't help me understand the world. So that's key. All right, finishing this out. The executive, what do we provide to the executives? It's always revenue forecasts, right? And commitments and roadmaps and stuff. By the way, useful training I give to all of my product managers and coaches. If you're talking with your executive team, the only sentences they can hear are the ones denominated in money, right? Everything else, it's the Charlie Brown wah, 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 wah noise, right? Tech debt, they can't hear, exclusive or trade-offs, they can't hear, need for tools, they can't hear. If it's not denominated in money, you're probably wasting your breath, right? And what we get back from the executive team is, permission for budgets and staff, almost always for more developers and makers, not for more product managers, right? Going through this at great length, because what you see out of this is that in order to survive in the product management bubble, you have to be trilingual. You have to speak enough developer and designer that you don't get disinvited from the stand-ups and locked in the closet. You have to speak enough true end user that you really, really, really understand what they're doing with your stuff. And you have to speak enough back of the envelope finance that the executive team doesn't cancel everything you're doing and move on. Right? So in the course of a day, in the course of every hour, you're trying to figure out which language to speak in to push your product ahead. We good? All right, and sorry that took a while, but seems worth establishing. Notice none of that requires that I write code, or that I QA product, or that I'm a UX or UI designer, right? Because smarter, better people get paid well to do that. All right, let's keep going. Questions, concerns, anger management out of this, anything? All right, let's keep going. All right, so how do we add value? Really important. And this is a discussion I have with CEOs probably 4 times a week. They call me up and say, we want product management to make engineering work faster. I don't think so. Right? First of all, not our job. Second of all, not our expertise. The way we get more value for the company is by making smarter decisions about what projects or products or features to start. Right? We all know that WIP kills all our teams and interrupts kill our teams. So the things that product managers do that actually deliver value to the company are squeezing more value out of engineering by not wasting time on things that don't matter. Notice that that's a lot about prioritization and blocking interrupts and being really, 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 really clear on why we're doing what we're doing so that we don't get halfway through and throw it away. Right? The parentheses there, skeptical. I'm deeply skeptical of every enhancement request and every demand, particularly if it comes either from our executives or our largest customers, because honestly, they don't know how the systems work. They're not real users, and it's almost all magical thinking, right? So the way product management gets more both joy and value out of engineering, right? We do endless amounts of validation to see that we're actually working on what might be useful. We're the prioritization hawks that block, ideally 95% of all the idiot interrupts that shouldn't work their way to engineering and waste everybody's time, right? And then if it's an interesting problem, we don't think that we have the answer ourselves just because we're the smartest people. We figure out who the smartest people are. We get them in a room together. It might be our whole team, might not. Right? And we figure out how to solve the problem instead of reading whatever post-it note got handed through 16 hands from a customer who didn't understand our architecture, right? So it's not about writing out a JIRA ticket, although that might eventually happen. It's about making sure that we're solving the right problems with good solutions. Obvious? Not to anybody on the marketing and sales side of the house, sorry. They never believe this. All they want is to squeeze more, what's the famous thing, right? If you guys could type faster, we'd get more done, right? Okay, again, obvious. What I've learned in 20 plus years of consulting is what I think is obvious isn't necessarily obvious. All right, so keep going. So here's the take.
Quick,
The
quick
first
question on that.
Go.
All right. What about like size of what you're trying to deliver? Wouldn't it be better to make product management to make sure that those things are in small chunks?
Sure,
that can be
absolutely.
Delivered frequently?
Absolutely. Although I think that's less important than, of the 5 huge things that the executive team has decided to do, and there's only room for one or a half, to be the heat shields for you guys, to be the semi-permeable membranes for you guys. I got to tell you, 80-90% of all the things that land on my desk as a chief product officer are worthless and stupid. Right. And the faster we can assign those, a point in the backlog that starts at 970, the better. Right. Often you can't say no. You can always say not this decade. Right?
Someone decided to do Clippy.
Yeah, and I hear it's coming back too. But anyway, the reason I'm adamant about this is because most of the folks outside the maker cycle, the development, design, product cycle, believe that product managers are really project managers, and their job is to stand over the development and design teams with a whip and not let them take lunch if they haven't finished their story points. Right. And gosh, if I could think of a way to get my team to quit faster, that might not be it. Right. Okay, good. Let's keep going. So here's the nice little takeaway that, again, I use all day long, every day. Right. If we deliver a feature or product on time, on quality, on spec, beautifully designed with a great user interface, and our customers don't buy it or don't use it, it's not an engineering failure, it's a product failure. Now, I did work, Ron's heard this before, I worked on a project, I was at Sybase from 93 to 96. And in 1995, I worked on a new product which came in on budget, on time, on spec. Probably not ever since, right? So my expectation is that almost every software project or product or release will run late, but that's not my problem. My problem is I can't waste my team's time and energy and love and passion and engagement on stuff that doesn't matter. Even though the entire company is pulling my coattails all day long with every one of their 1,000 suggestions for what we should do. Right? So again, that's the outward face. Let's keep going. This is exaggerated on purpose, but you may recognize some of these phrases, right? Prioritization means getting what my team needs. Endlessly, I work with exec teams who believe prioritization really just means I get what I need. They don't believe in the exclusive or operator. They only believe in the and operator. Okay. Anybody heard you can fit more than one thing in the roadmap? And by the way, that's recursive, right? Okay. Usually this comes from finance, right? We think engineering is sitting around eating bonbons and playing Fortnite. So somebody in finance decides we're going to have this time card system where every 5 minutes, every developer has to record what they were working on, right? Gosh, that's a way to get more done, right? This is maybe my favorite, right? If you just understood how big this deal was, right, you would somehow figure out how to get it into the roadmap. Well, 1, I don't believe you. 2, it's not that important. And 3, we're full up. I'm sorry. There's no room at the end. Here's one you guys may see more, right? Product management is almost always seen as a barrier and a frustrator of the go-to-market side of the house. And so there's a lot of incentive to sidestep, go around. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. I can tell you there's not a single person on the sales and marketing side of your company who cares about any of these things, right? Agile, don't care. That just whatever, right? Story points, just tell me how many story points it is and I'll fund it, right? No one is interested on the other side of the house when we spend 6 hours explaining how sprints work or don't work and Kanban versus, or XP, or none of them care about any of this. And we keep spending hours and hours trying to show them how smart we are. And you know what? Wasted time. Okay. And this one, of course, only comes up when your requester is sure they know what they need, which is, by the way, all the time. right? Because they're smart. And this is where the waste comes from, right? Just do the thing we told you to do. All right. Did I miss any? I'm sure there's more. All right, let's keep going. I want to stay on time, right? So here's where I actually get to my point. I'm sitting in the chief product or VP of product chair, right? And I have a peer, and if I'm really lucky, it's Ron, who's sitting in the VP engineering or CTO chair, whatever we call it, right? I believe we have to do these things in order not to be destroyed by the rest of the organization, not to be written down, right? I always try to have it at least a weekly sit down and maybe a daily check-in. If there's issues, I want to get out ahead of them. If my engineering partner is having trouble, I want to figure out how to help. I never want to be surprised by the rest of the company about anything that's happening in engineering that's important, right? Assume good intent, right? This is hard sometimes, but it's I fail without good engineering support anyway, right? I might as well get a new job. So it's best for me to assume that if something went wrong, it's because we had a misunderstanding or somebody had a problem or we can fix it, instead of engineering doesn't like me. Honestly, there's plenty of people on the other side of the company who will do that for you, right? One voice, undercutting the politics. I just put out a piece a couple of weeks ago about how prioritization is actually as much a political problem as it is an analytical problem, because every single member of your executive team wants at least 100% of development effort on their thing, right? Everywhere, right? Maybe 150%, who knows, right? What's important here is that the engineering leader and the product leader not argue in front of the stakeholders in ways that undercut our ability to support an agenda, right? Again, we might fight like crazy with the door closed, but I believe when we show up in the weekly all executive staff meeting, either of us should be able to answer any question and in exactly the same way, right? Last two things, right? I think it's my job as head of product to frequently and loudly compliment and applaud everybody on the design and development and DevOps and tech support and QA and tech docs teams. First of all, because they do really good work and it's hard. And second of all, because nobody else other than the VP of engineering is thanking them in public. Right. So it's part of my job. I use the word merchandising. Okay. How do I merchandise the good work that development and engineering and design do as often as I can, so they get some respect from the rest of the company, who has honestly no idea what you guys do. Right. And then, I try to keep the politics out of this. How do we, the head of engineering and the head of product, model good behavior for our folks? Somebody comes to me with a complaint about an engineer. My first question is, so what did that engineer say when you discussed this with him or her? Oh, I didn't do that. Okay, well, why don't you guys talk about it? And if there's still an issue, you can come back to me or whoever, right? How do we model good behavior? We don't throw each other under the bus. Is this obvious? One hopes, okay? Yet in the dozen interim jobs I did and the 6 or 8, full-time jobs I did, I would say I got this less than half the time. Okay, almost there. Anti-patterns, because we always need anti-patterns, right? Anytime the stakeholders, the internal groups are running around product to engineering, we're in trouble, because mostly it's because they didn't get what they wanted and they're trying to shake up the priority or the backlog or the queue or whatever it is, right? Sigh. Okay. Yes, I may have an opinion of how.
So in bullet number 1, it's incumbent upon all of us.
Yes.
To have the mantra of, have you talked to product management? Okay.
Right. Spot on. Right. Product manager sizing development work. Generally a bad idea. Right.
As is managers sizing development
You
work,
bet.
actually.
Right. And so I take folks to task for that on my side, but I hope to hear from the engineering side of the world when it's happening, so I know we're in trouble. Right. I don't believe any development team should be working, even if they're just doing infrastructure or platform work, without a product manager. I see a third to a half to 60% total waste in the work that those teams do, not because they're not working hard, but because they lack stakeholder input. They lack, business information. They lack clarity about strategy. When I see a team that doesn't have a product manager, I'm assuming that we're going to throw away half of what they do and they're going to be unhappy about it. Let's keep going. Engineering has a roadmap, product has a roadmap. I don't think so, right? That's the same as fighting in public. Product managers who don't include all the things we have to do to stay in business, right? All they want is features. Sorry, all we want is features. Pretty bad, right? And I have a pie chart at the end of this that Ron's seen a lot. And then having finally gone to all the trouble of ranking and prioritizing, if engineering's not using whatever list came from product management, I know we're in trouble. Now, whose fault it is, I've got no idea, right? We'll figure it out. But these are things where when I see them, I know that I'm in a world of hurt. We good? All right. I got 3 minutes. Let's stay on time here. Oh, this is usually when the salespeople get promoted to product management because they're not good salespeople, right? Don't, I'm always telling my folks, don't lie to customers, right? Don't talk about next year's features as if they're this year's features, right? That's what the salespeople do this all day long. Product managers need to be a little more honest. Okay, so here's we never fight in front of the kids, right? We fight, but we do it with the doors closed, respectfully with each other, and we come out with an answer and we support each other, right? Otherwise, well, you'll see, right? Oh, here's my portfolio. I won't go through this in great detail. I got a long post and some other things on it, but when I see a healthy software team, and I'm thinking of software products as opposed to internal consumption, right? I expect the purple slice. That's all the stuff that the world's going to demand and see and beat us over the heads for, right? That's stuff that customers want and pay for directly. Notice I didn't make it 100% of the pie. Oh, quick quiz. There's something magical about pie charts that's different from all other kinds of charts that's particularly useful for executives. What's special about pie charts? Don't think too hard. Go ahead, Aaron.
They're finite.
Yeah, and what does that mean for non-scientists?
There's exactly 100% available here, and that's it.
Yeah. So in sales language, if you want to make one of the slices bigger, you have to make another slice smaller. Okay, that's completely contrary to what every executive at your company outside of engineering and product wants to believe. They all want to believe that we can make each of the slices a little bigger, right? So pie charts help us make choices. And here the choice is, I'd expect, unless we're in deep trouble, roughly half of our story points, engineering weeks, whatever we're managing or counting, right, goes toward things that customers ask for by name. Something like 30 or 40% in the red slice goes toward all the things we have to do to stay in business, which customers should never ask us for. Right? If they're calling us up, telling us there's a scalability problem, we're a year late, right? But at the top, again, in enterprise, there's always a few things that the biggest customers want that the CEO overrides us on. We should probably plan for that because it happens every quarter. And if that blue slice gets more than about 10%, I know it's time to leave time for me to leave the company because we're going to be in deep trouble in 3 quarters, right? And then at the bottom is all the validation and discovery that we do that nobody else sees because it's mostly discarding stuff that didn't work, right? And if we don't do that, it's all waste. So a shape like this helps us pin down the different stakeholders so we can compare more like things to each other. Because if you put them all in one big stack with one set of criteria, it's always current quarter revenue. And we never invest in architecture or quality or tech debt or anything else. Oh, last quiz here. Anybody know how a teenage boy eats an entire chocolate cake that's sitting on the kitchen counter?
In one bite?
Nope. So every time he walks through the kitchen, he grabs the fork and has one little more bite.
Oh.
By the end of the day, end of cake, EOK, right? What's important about that is the way we lose control of the roadmap and the work isn't in big chunks, it's in little chunks. It's every single person in the company interrupting one engineer and wanting one little fix, right? And so having some higher level view where we count at the end of every month to see how we're doing, and notice that we keep having an 80% purple thing, and we're confused about why all our systems are failing, right? Is about seeing the trend. It's coloring under the curve, right? It's seeing the pattern, which the sales and marketing side will never see. We good? All right, let's wrap it up. Okay, who leads on issues? Whatever, I made a list here. So things that I expect to have the last call on versus engineering, right? The absolute priorities, right? Whether something really passed market discovery, what the business goals are. You can work down product staffing, not engineering staffing, product tools, not engineering tools, right? That investment portfolio that I just showed you, I think it's my final call. And I want to be out in front managing all the interrupts. Okay, let's do the other half.
We want you out in front managing all the interrupts.
Well, we're going to do that too in a second, right? So what do I think I have to give ground finally on it to engineering on the final call, right? Delivery dates are not owned by product. They're not, right? Estimating size, no. Architecture, no. Tech debt, no. I may have opinions about quality and engineering staffing and tools. They are opinions. Thank you for sharing, you guys should say, right? Now, back to Ron's point here. The last two, I think, are the same. Engineering and product must be aligned on this investment portfolio, or the rest of the company will rip us to shreds. And we both need to be out in front on blocking interrupts, because otherwise engineering gets, used up in all the corners. Issues, questions, concerns? Obvious, maybe, right? And these are the kind of things I want to be talking about with my engineering partner at least once a week, right? No surprises. Bad news maybe, but no surprises. Okay, so here's our takeaways. Hint, there's a takeaway container, right? Okay. Product management ultimately and completely fails if engineering doesn't support it. Sorry, end of job, go home, right? I can't do my job unless engineering got my back. Right. Likewise, engineering is going to waste an awful lot of effort if we don't have good, strong product management. Now, you can still run engineering. You're just going to have unhappy people working on things that don't matter. Right. But often I see engineering teams with no product management at all. And this is what happens, right? Healthy disagreements, but shared outcomes. We fight, but then we get to an answer. And then in public, we do our best never to pick each other apart in public, because the rest of the company doesn't understand and doesn't care. All right, that's me. That's my dog. That's how to find me. Hint, my last name is the same as my domain, is the same as my handle. And there's 21 years of blog posts up there because 2001 was the year blogs arrived. All right, so that's the takeaway. I think I'm done.
Okay, so what we're going to do is go into breakout rooms.
Okay.
Hopefully, all have some opinions about what Rich has said. Share those opinions with each other. Introduce yourselves to each other. We're going to have two breakout rooms.
Okay.
And I'm going to actually, if you want to stop sharing, Rich.
I didn't. Okay, there we go. Stop sharing.
There we go.
They tell me I overshare.
We have two breakout rooms. I'm going to pause the recording.
Okay.
There we go. And we're back from our breakout. We're back from our breakout rooms. And the one I was in, we had a ton of commentary. So you really launched a bunch of commentary, Rich. No surprise.
No surprise.
Including the observation, the general agreement that there's no team that anyone's seen that doesn't have a list of things to do that's longer than anyone's arm. But Sean had a question right at the very end that if you want to ask that question of Rich, I think that would be a really valuable question to ask.
I think there's so many questions, but Rich, I was thinking back to your IO diagram and the relationship between product management and engineering, and given the audience, what resources might you recommend, either your blog, and are there specific posts or books that act as sort of a playbook to manage some of those key concerns?
I got a bunch of blog posts. There's a 1 hour talk I have recorded on my talks page that goes through that chart for 35 minutes. But I think the key item for me is a lot of organizations want to divide up the talking to engineering work from the talking to the customers and markets work. And they create two separate positions. And generally they call the inward looking one a product owner, because they do. And then they struggle for some name for the other thing, which doesn't have a name because it shouldn't exist, right? And so they have two different people, and that means two in a box. Every time we need to make a decision or understand something or filter some data, we have to have the two people sharing a brain, right? For me, it's fundamentally inefficient and bad. So when I parachute into a company, which I'm hoping not to do again, but maybe I will, the very first thing I do is I erase that. I say every single person with a product title, and by the way, I don't care what we call them, product owners, product managers, it's the work, not the title, right? But here's the test. Every single person on the product management team will each spend half of their time, roughly, facing inward toward the team. Sprint planning and backlogs and stories and acceptance and taking the team out for beer and pizza and all the things we got to do and listening to all the complaints of the development team and all the stuff, right? And the other half has to be not just sales support, but at least 1 or 2 interviews with real customers or prospects every single week, so you get enough data and you can see who the outliers are, right? If you're not doing that, I reject you as a product person. Now, again, when you look in the Scrum book, you don't find half of that. You find the inward looking thing on the assumption that someone else in the company made all the interesting decisions. And again, that's both demeaning and it's the definition of waste, right? So for me, again, I would call you can call them end to end, you can call them full stack, whatever you want to call them. But if you're a product manager in my organization, you actually do this every week. You find out what's true in the world and you knock down your own assumptions and everybody else's, right? And you validate and you discover to an inch of your life, because you have to earn the right when it's time to sit with the team and say, this is the problem I think we need to solve for our customers, that it's a problem they really care about, they're going to pay us for, and that you got it framed correctly. One other thing there, on every discovery call, again, let's assume there's 1 or 2 a week here, I always try to invite 1 member of the development team and 1 member of the design team to sit in real time, not just to read my notes, because they hear things I don't hear. They understand things I don't understand. They ask better questions, right? We are smarter when all 3 of us listen in. I try to lead because you need somebody leading the discussion, right? But the idea that I'm going to take all the notes, hear all the right things, and somehow translate that for my developers and designers is just dumb, right? And it doesn't get the buy-in. If we think about the emotional, well, let me back up. I don't believe what a lot of the marketing and sales folks believe, which is that developers don't care about users. Simply not true, right? We deeply and desperately care that our stuff's going to get used and it's going to solve problems, that people are going to love us. We just don't express it in the way salespeople express it. So when I get my developers in rotation to hear real customers tell us about real problems and get myself out of the way, it frees all this energy up where they suddenly want to spend all night thinking about how to solve this problem, right? It's not time and attendance, it's love. It's enthusiasm, it's qualitative. And so getting the designers and developers on the damn call is part of the job, right? So that we as a group understand the context, understand the problem, understand the edges. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I'm usually not, right? So I don't care if you call that person a product owner or product manager or George, right? But when I inspect what most product owners do, I don't see that half of the problem. I see them forced to be order takers and forced to be note takers, but they're not going to the source to find out if we're doing the right thing. And for me, it's a crying shame, because for me, they're the most important resources and people in the company, and we're tying them down so they can't do a good job. EOM. good. What else? I'm sorry, we had something else there too.
To Sean's question about resources,
Yes,
I pasted Rich's shoulder to shoulder blog post
yes, good.
Into the chat. It is what this talk was based off of.
Yes,
It was the inspiration, my inspiration to say that's a talk that we need to have that.
good. Yes, so this came right out of a post of mine, and I'm looking for, just a second. I'm looking for here's a talk. So it's a video as opposed to a post. Go argue with me, but it's an hour's talk on how I think about structuring product management teams and matching them against engineering teams. And I take the product owner thing apart down to first principles.
I did so Rich was in the other group. What did you discuss that should be shared and expanded on more broadly?
Yeah, well, the one topic that I think would be great that we discussed, had a couple discussions around, was having product owners that are basically subject matter experts. They're not, they've never really done the product thing before. They're just put in there because they know the space, or they're considered experts on the space. So, you know, how do you handle that from an engineering perspective if you have, you know, that as your product partner? And yeah, how do you work to kind of curate that relationship?
I might turn that question around and say, how do we keep that from happening? Right. So my observation about SMEs is that almost by definition, because they're subject matter experts, their internal workings and their training and their assumption is that they already know the answers, and which is fine until they're wrong, or until their experience isn't general. So like in the healthcare space, I endlessly see healthcare software companies who picked up somebody from a hospital IT who's only worked in that one hospital system for their 30 years and who believes all hospital systems are the same. Right. By the way, the wisdom here is when you've seen one hospital system, you've seen one hospital system. There are no two that are alike. And so in that space, we keep hiring SMEs who believe that the world is somehow uniform and that their experience is the right one. And they don't have any sense that they need to go out and validate that they're wrong on almost everything, or that it's old, or the systems have changed, or they don't understand the architecture, or they've never seen software built, right? In general, I would hire a SME who's been a product manager for a while. I think any good product manager can spend a month or some amount of time following users around and figuring out what the application does. Because by the way, your users have to figure out how to use it in less time than that, right? You know, banking's not that hard. Insurance is not that hard. Sonar is not that hard for a product manager to learn enough to really understand their users. I think it takes 5 years to become a good product manager and 3 or 4 months to really learn a new subject area. So I flip it and say, that's a fundamentally wrong hiring strategy from my point of view. And unless you've got folks who are senior to them, who can teach them how to do product management, you have a bad outcome. The other trope on this, again, I'm with executives most days. The Socratic method here says, would you hire a VP of engineering who'd never written any software and didn't know how it worked? I hope not. Would you hire a CFO who didn't know how payroll worked and benefits and how to make sure we don't run out of money? I hope not. Would you hire a head of sales who'd never sold anything? And go down the list. Okay, but we just hired a head of product who's never been a product manager and never seen software built and is some subject expert from our market.
He understands hospitals.
Yes, it's the recipe for MTBE, mean time between executives. Okay, product management, it's 2 years. If you hire the wrong ones, it's 6 months, right? I get paid a lot of money by a lot of my clients to remind them over and over and over again that the #1 criterion for the head of product is that they understand how products are built and how the product job works. And they keep forgetting over and over again because it's not what they want to hear. Oh, but I worked at a hospital. Bully for you. All right, end of speech. What else we got? We're out of time.
No, we got a little bit more.
Okay, one more.
One, maybe two.
Brandon, you've been awfully quiet on this.
My question to the group was more figuring out estimating, like developers have their idea of how much it'll take, which usually takes longer because they're always
Usually.
like, I can do that in an hour.
Mhm.
And then blending in the external, the management of it,
Yeah.
trying to, and we're an 8 team, we work remotely, and it's a
Sure.
really good team, we're real cohesive, but it's always that thing of just trying to figure out an accurate thing to tell a client.
Yeah.
And not fixed, obviously, we know it, we have,
Yeah.
and different clients on different systems and stuff.
Yep. So I tend to defer on this one.
Hmm.
Right. So, and, you know, Ron taught me, and I forget who's originally what it was, but he taught me the whole snake sort thing with all the cards that works really better than story points. But if my engineering team wants to do whatever method for estimation, they get to choose. Now, I get to be the one who keeps pointing out that we're underestimating stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, I try to coach or suggest here, but I mean, just imagine if I came into your team and said, Jira is terrible, we're moving to Trello. Right?
Right.
Which, by the way, I think is the worst product in the world because it has no hierarchy, but regardless, right?
Yeah.
Or I came in and had a lot of opinions about how you're checking in code and what our automatic test harness should be and whether, you know, Selenium is the right way. You know what? I'm entitled to an opinion, but not much more.
Mhm.
Right. So certainly I would see the issue and I would raise the issue and I would try my best to be of help. But
Okay.
I think having product managers add 35% just because that's the average overage doesn't get to the root of the issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And one more thought and then I'll let it go. I think if we can estimate within 20 or 25%, it's a really good day.
Okay.
Right. The idea that if we spent another 27 hours, we could get it any finer than that. I just haven't found it to be true.
Sure.
So the idea that there's a bunch of folks whipping the product people in order to whip the engineering team to do better estimates, I think is a lack of understanding of how gravity works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then clients are one, you know, we were constantly telling them it's really almost, it's very, very difficult to accurately estimate custom software. You know, it's just, there's
course
too
it
many
is. Of course it
variables,
is.
too many
Right.
things.
Yeah.
So that's
right.
Mhm.
And so if we go back to the choices that a product manager can actually make, right? So
Mhm.
let's assume I'm on some software product and shockingly it's going to be late. Never happened before, right? Here are my choices. I can drop a feature that hopefully hasn't been started or isn't along too much
Mhm.
and ship whatever else we got on time. Or I can suggest we wait.
Okay.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I can't make anybody work harder. I can't make them smarter. I don't think I can fill the engineering openings any faster, right?
Yeah.
And so every good product manager in their back pocket actually has a sorted list, a prioritized list of what's been promised
Mhm.
so that we do it in the right order, you know, minimizing whip. And I always know which one I'm going to drop if we're running late.
Yeah.
And ideally I share that with the team, right?
Cool.
So I
Yep.
hope we're not late, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds good.
right.
That makes sense.
And then we don't have to lie to each other.
Right. Yeah. Being realistic is
That's right.
very
We can
good.
save all the lying for what we tell our sales team.
Right. Thank
Oh,
you.
Yeah, I got one more question. Actually, I was hoping to sneak in
Go.
before we wrap up. You mentioned allocation and kind of how that relates to tech debt. From
Yes.
a product perspective, do you just give a bucket and say put in your tech debt here, or do you want them to communicate this in a business value or some sort of way that makes sense. So you can, as a product, prioritize. Do you prioritize tech debt?
Let me take the in-between answer there. Okay,
Sure.
so I think product has the responsibility for the final prioritization, but I'm pretty sure that the smartest people in the room about tech debt are not the product manager, right? So what I like to do is I like to ask my team to give me a prioritized list of tech debt, but I get the final call. Right. In the same way that I can go to my tech support team and ask them for the top 10 bugs, which they know because they're getting the calls all the time. Now, some of them are hard to fix or some of them are against policy, but I can start with the top 10 bugs because we're going to spend, 15% of our story points every week fixing bugs. And honestly, I don't care which ones they are, right? But I retain the final override if it doesn't make sense. Right, so separating knowledge from responsibility here. I know we got to fix bugs. I know we got to retire tech debt. If my team makes a good argument, gosh, I have other things to worry about, right? As long as we don't overspend. If I think it's wrong, I'll engage as an equal here. And sometimes I do have the right answer, but honestly, the engineering team gets most of the benefit of retiring tech debt. So they are the experts in which things are going to be most beneficial to them.
Gotcha.
Yep. Again, it's the difference between responsibility and who's the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I see that from just making sure that it's communicated effectively, right? Like how it gets communicated back and forth, not just,
Right.
hey, we have to do this story that you don't understand. I think
That's right.
It's important engineering communicate
right.
the value.
That's right. Spot on. I mean, I do think there has to be one individual who has the final say so that we don't have 5 different sorted orders.
Right.
But smart product managers know what they're not good at or what they don't need to decide. And I get to do less work if I can delegate out some portions of this to the smarter people and have them give me the answers. Right. Sure. I have to retain the right to say no or to change it if I have a better reason. But I don't want to do the work. I mean, shit, I'm lazy, right? So how do I engage on this? In the same way, by the way, there's a game I play with heads of sales when they cooperate, which is that the head of sales gets 1 engineer week for anything he or she wants every quarter, once. What that lets me do is to send every individual salesperson back to their VP to lobby the VP for what's most important. And usefully, the sales VP gets paid on total revenue for the company. And so has an incentive to actually use that rare bit of engineering on something that's going to generate a lot of money for the company because that's how they get paid. Right. So if I can delegate a little bit of decision making to the sales side and let them beat each other up, right, and have one person who comes back with the answer, less interrupts for engineering, less overhead for product, and fewer unhappy people on my side.
And probably the right decision being made.
One hopes, but if they make a bad decision, they don't make as much money and they don't get that Tesla this quarter. So, notice, by the way, and one other theme from me and all my coaching to heads of product is the number one thing we do is we are students of human behavior at the executive level. We've got to understand how to move people around without any authority to get the right things done. And that's not a coding issue, and that's not a story writing issue, right? It's not even a customer issue. It's really understanding how folks work in terms of their motivations and departmental reward systems. Because if you ask salespeople to do something that doesn't maximize their quota, their revenue, they will ignore you regardless of how smart you are. So that turns out not to be a good strategy. The better strategy is to make sure I'm helping engineer the comp plan for sales so that we sell the things we got to sell.
Okay.
Done. There you go.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's a wrap. So, hey, Rich, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us, and I really enjoyed it. Got a lot out of it, and yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Go get them.
All right. And thank you all for joining the Managing Software Teams in Seattle group.
All right. Even if
Thanks,
we're not
Ron.
in
Thanks,
Seattle.
Nate.
Thanks,
Rich.
Ron. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rich.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Night.